And each day brings a new and
Definitely.
ever more creative explanation for the supply chain woes that afflict America. From Jen Psaki,
Does she know what a supply chain is now?
like this one.
Okay.
One, what's happening right now, and I wish I had the chart, but we'll give it to all of you afterwards, is that so many people across the country are purchasing more goods online. Maybe some of it is from habits that developed during the pandemic when people weren't leaving their homes. Some of it is because we've seen an economic recovery that has been underway for the last 9 months, where 5 million more people are working. The unemployment rate has been cut in half. And that is leading to a massive increase in volume. That's what's happening at ports. But what we would tell people is we are addressing and attacking the supply chain issues, even with the increased volume, which is the root cause here, at every front, which means overseas, making sure people get COVID vaccines, which means making sure ports are fully operational, working with railroads, working with truckers and labor unions to make sure we have more people driving trucks, more people moving goods. So I think what people should know is this is a top priority. We've already seen progress, and we're going to continue to stay at it.
I love when they boast that they take away our jobs and they celebrate and they take credit when they give us our jobs back.
Yeah, they're not giving us any jobs. Employers are hiring or they're not hiring. Jen Psaki also noting that this is so serious that Mayor Pete has cut short his breastfeeding.
Oh, he's off of paternity leave?
For more on this, pleased to be joined by Jim Iuorio, Fox business analyst and proprietor of Brant's in Palatine. Jim, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Is that what's happening? The supply chain issue now is just a matter of unusually high volume of internet shoppers because of habit changes during the pandemic?
Of course not. It's sad when you hear her say it, and you can hear her stuttering as she said it, because I'm sure they cobbled together that reason right before the interview. But it's really insulting to the people who are listening. All you have to do is, you don't even have to do a deep dive. You do a very shallow wade into the situations that are happening in California, and you can just see how these are self-inflicted wounds, absolutely. I read a really interesting piece about the Port of Long Beach and all the different regulations from AB5 to different, stacking regulations and codes that are keeping those yards completely filled that they can't get anything done. And it amazes me. One thing to consider is that I know every time I come on the show, I talk about the modern monetary theory and how they're instituting this. One of the things, the basic tenets of modern monetary theory is that when we're coming out of the recession that we are, the federal government is supposed to bid on labor against the corporate sector so that in the long term they raise wages. Now, this is obviously happening, and it continues, and that's what we just don't have the workers to fill the spots. But there's a confluence of a lot of different things, and you know what's funny is that probably 1/10 of it is what Jen Psaki said, not that everybody's so flush with cash that they're buying things, but by this injecting $7 trillion into the economy over the last year and a half, yeah, there's a lot of loose money that's chasing things around. So it's not an outright lie, but it is when it's coming from a government official.
So but President Biden, his solution is, well, we're going to keep those ports open 24/7, but the truckers aren't there to take the goods away. So when do you see this ending, or is this just going to be a perpetual nightmare until what Janet Yellen said, 2022?
No, I think if the elections next week go badly against the Democrats, I think we're going to start seeing a change of heart happen relatively quickly. It is an election year, and all the different shackles they have on the economy, they'll probably start to loosen a little bit. The really, really sad truth is that if there are tons of jobs available, it is not good policy to make choosing not to work a comfortable position. Now, this should just be obvious to everybody. I mean, if there was a situation where there's no jobs available, I have no problem with the government stepping in and trying to take the edge off a deep recession. There's jobs available. There should be a natural punishment to choosing not to work in that environment.
There's something else about trucking, particularly in California, with respect to the issue there at the ports. The truck ban in California, which regulates all trucks must be 2011 or newer, combined with the new AB5 law that basically prohibits independent owner-operators. So traditionally, California ports had been served by these owner-operators, often non-union, but now California banned those independent contractors. In addition, long-term truckers to California not investing in newer replacement trucks because California also has a law which makes them illegal in 2035 anyhow, the requirements to purchase electric trucks which do not yet exist. So you also have something that's very unique to California because of these policy choices state legislators and governors in California have made. And I just wanted to focus on that for a second because of the policy implications at the state level. Everything is always, we talk about it at the federal and so on and so forth, but there are unique problems in states, Illinois being another prime example. We could spend epochs talking about that, but this specific issue, it's particularly pronounced in California because of California because of what California chose to do to itself.
There's no question, and there's more to it than just that, too. Like, even at the individual port yards, there's regulations about how high you can stack containers, things like that. There's regulations all up and down. California, for 50 years, has had every geographical advantage in the world. They think we're going good, and they made the assumption that it was because they were smart and had good policies. So as each year passed, they enacted stupider and stupider policies, and now they're suffering from that. Even just recently, like leaf blowers can no longer be gas-powered. I don't know when they enact that. But the self-inflicted wounds of this is maddening. Anyone who looks at this, you don't have to do a deep dive. All you have to do is look at a little bit of the information, and all this is self-inflicted.
How's it going with your business? Have you been able to maintain staff, find staff, and have you had to raise prices?
We've had to raise prices once, and we're going to definitely have to do it again because everything has gone up. The input costs of a restaurant, which I'm so amazed, being someone who's involved in economics and owning this restaurant for the last 8 years, you're talking about energy, you're talking about different kinds of, all different kinds of input costs, and they've all gone up substantially. So, yes, we will be raising prices again. Our restaurant is a bad comp for other restaurants just because we had so many advantages going into this, and that was the loyalty that had been built up long before we owned it. So we're doing fine. We're having a little bit of a difficult time with staff, but we're getting through. I hear friends in the restaurant industry that are having a much, much more difficult time than we are.
We heard at the top of the hour Mike Scott talking about the prospect that a framework for a deal on the tax and on the socialist tax and spendathon may be forthcoming today. Wall Street Journal opining on the tax side of this today, pretty good riff. The editorial board writes, one day it's an increase in tax rates on corporations and the affluent, but wait, that doesn't have the votes. How about a carbon tax? That won't fly either. Hey, there goes Jeff Bezos. Let's tax him and 699 other billionaires. It polls well. Everyone hates billionaires. Oh, but that may be unconstitutional. We still need money, so let's try a 15% corporate minimum tax, though be sure to exempt investments in green energy and other pet progressive ideas. So it'll have to be a minimum tax on some companies, but not others. Bring on the Gucci Gulch lobbyists, campaign checkbooks at the ready.
The greatest thing here is that they keep arguing back and forth. And I didn't want, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are not the heroes I expected in this, but the fact that government can't get anything done is wonderful in this instance because every time they get something done, it's pretty ridiculous. There's something that I'd like to point out, too, and I always talk about modern monetary theory, and this is going to be no exception. By their own theory, they don't really need these taxes to fund their spending. Borrowing and deficit spending is like a key component of it. So these are just to be punitive. They look at the 700 billionaires, and again, this would be like throwing a deck chair off the Titanic to collect what the numbers they're talking about. Plus, it's absolutely ridiculous to try to tax unrealized capital gains. If Jeff Bezos has to sell 2% of his Amazon stock once a year to meet his tax obligations, there's a lot of traders out there who are going to know that and front-run the market, and it could cause some dislocations. So the notion, everything we hear, and I'm getting more and more cynical all the time, the one thing that I love about these negotiations is that they're going nowhere. That part is beautiful.
Yeah, taxing unrealized gains. So then do we get a refund for unrealized losses?
Of course not. Of course not. And again, if you're the Shiba Inu guy who made $8 billion, and now he's going to get a tax bill on that unrealized gain, and all of a sudden it's going to go to zero. So the whole thing is a sucker bet.
So something else, too, some REIT operators wrote about in the Journal the other day. Under the House bill, the taxation of real estate operating profit would soar from just under 30% to more than 46%. And real estate capital gains taxes would spike from 20 to 31.8%. That's an extra 16.8% tax on operations, an extra 11.8% tax on capital gains for the real estate investor, increasing rates while limiting deductible losses, which is what we did in the 1986 tax reform for passive investors that crashed the real estate market, that led to the S&L crisis, that led to a bailout of the S&Ls. This is the same recipe that was tried in 86, they argue. I think they're right.
No, and all you have to do is read, F.A. Hayek's book, Road to Serfdom. And when you learn about these economic planning and trying to just do all the things that they're trying to do instead of letting the market solve it on its own. And all they do is build up excesses in one place, and then they try to pop it in another, and they end up doing ridiculous things. The thing that keeps coming back to me is how hard they've tried to fight this recovery the whole way. And I don't understand it. At first I thought it was just garden variety incompetence. And now I think it's almost nefarious, because if they can claim, the more people who are being hurt by these policies, the more people depend on government, the more they can act their new socialist agenda. But these taxes, again, we are doing this thing in this country where we are not giving enough credit to the risk takers, to the people who go out there and create. The woman who sold that Spanx company was absolutely eviscerated on social media because she sold her company for, let's call it $1.5 billion, and gave every employee 2 round-trip tickets anywhere in the world and $10,000 bonus. And people on social media were destroying her, saying she made $1.5 billion and that's all she gave away. It's her money. You give away your money. I mean, what she's created.
A lot of people don't do that.
Company.
I know.
Yeah.
She paid them for their loyalty.
Yes, absolutely. It seemed wonderful to me.
With respect to what may come, I mean, since this is a moving target, as the journal opined, what do you think would be the worst of the proposed tax hikes in terms of crippling growth or decimating asset value, and what is the least worst?
Well, I think the corporate tax hike is the worst, just because, and they know it too. That's one of the reasons that they tried to get other countries to join in their little scheme, just to avoid the competition of some companies that have a lower tax rate than others. So they know that that's a bad and debilitating tax. Some of the other taxes are quite comical, like the capital gains tax. They know full well that raising that tax from the already punitive level of 23.8, it doesn't collect any more tax receipts. Rich people don't sell if the situation isn't good to them. They just borrow against their gains. So that's one's just it's funny to me, because we talk about self-inflicted wounds. Raising the capital gains tax will absolutely lower the tax receipts from capital gains. So it's just kind of stupid, and it just makes you scratch your head. But I definitely say corporations, you got to let them expand, and provide incentive for capital gains, not disincentive. I mean, capital expenditures, not disincentive.
And the least worst option among those that have been presented?
Well, the least worst from a I mean, okay, this is going to be hard for me to say, but taxing the billionaires, 1% of those it doesn't really matter. I am 100% against it for 2 reasons. 1, the slippery slope argument, and 2, I don't want the federal government to have any more money. Where more money comes, corruption comes. But it wouldn't do that much economic harm. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's, again, least worst, not good.
Yeah, least worst. I'm not a proponent at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Jim Iuorio, Fox Business contributor and the proprietor of Brandt's restaurant in Palatine, with the best burger in the Western world, as I understand it.
That's correct. Yeah, that's a fact.
That is a fact.
And how high did you raise?
Fact checked.
Yes, and how much more do I have to pay for a burger there?
Probably just about 5%. You won't even notice.
Oh, okay. But I'll get more beef, right? It's a bigger burger, sure.
Oh, of course. Of course. Yeah.
Jim Iuorio, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now I'm hungry. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Dan Proft. You've heard me talk about Northridge Prep and the great work they're doing with young men, but you might not know they have a sister school.
That's right, Dan. Willows Academy is the type of school you want for your daughter in today's crazy world. Willows is an all-girls Catholic middle and high school